The Trump administration did not hit on one of the key, most critical threats to Homeland Security right here in America when they did their conference on restricting the Chinese purchase of farmland around U.S. military bases. They did talk about, and food security, and that is something of paramount importance. And they kind of talked about having the farmland used as a weapon against us. They did mention security concerns, but they didn't really hit on the key major concern, which I think we should take as a lesson from the recent Operation Spiderweb and conducted by Ukraine across 5 time zones in Russia, where they hit 4 Russian military bases with 41 aircraft struck, and also the Mossad's Operation Rise and Line, where the initial couple of days of that, all this was happening in June, by the way. June 1st for Operation Spiderweb, and the initial part of Operation Rise and Line was on the 12th and 13th of June. So within the span of a couple of weeks, we had two major examples of just mind-blowing hits by drones, how the Mossad snuck into Iran, how Ukraine snuck across Russia to launch these attacks. My friends, that was mind blowing. It was stunning what they did. The level of destruction wreaked by these drones was absolutely off the charts. However, I submit to you that China has far more infrastructure, far more capacity to do far more damage right here at home in your own backyard and take down so much of everything. They could bring this nation to its knees, militarily, civilian wise, economically, you name it, just by assets they have in this country. My friends, this is a wake up call. This past month should have been a wake up call. If this could be done over there, what could happen right here at home? This is ignored. And it was further ignored when we had all these New Jersey drone sightings, which weren't just New Jersey. We had like 17 U.S. military bases, which happened to have Chinese farmland in their vicinity with drone overflights for months on end. And no good explanation. It's, oh, yeah, we were in control of this. We knew what they were after we didn't know what they were, right? Kind of reminds you of certain files that weren't released that we've heard about recently. I don't know. Maybe they swept this under the rug, I think, because they were afraid of alarming the people. And that's probably also why they didn't emphasize the aspect of what could happen from drones around these farmlands. They kind of kept this down because they don't want to scare the britches off of Americans. My friends, you need to be aware. You need to prepare. That's what I'm talking about. Don't be scared. Be prepared. So we're going to go into this. I'm going to talk about and just for analogy, so you can understand the scale of what happened with the Operation Spiderweb, the Operation Rise and Line, and then we're going to look at some articles. But I'm going to talk to you about why China could do so much more here in the United States with just drones. But it's not just drones. There's so many things they could pull on us. And furthermore, there are indications that China really is planning to invade Taiwan and do so soon. And I offered you as proof of that the fact that the Chinese told the Europeans that they could not afford for Russia to lose the war in Ukraine because they need America distracted. They need the United States distracted so that we can't put the resources over there whilst they do what they want to do. They wouldn't care about that if they weren't planning an invasion. My friends, they wouldn't have a need for America to be distracted if they weren't planning to do something. And I submit to you that might happen sooner than later. The next good calm sea state is in October coming up. Everybody's aiming toward, and we're supposedly going to get ready for the Chinese to be ready to invade Taiwan in 2027. Well, Sun Tzu principles say you ain't going to tell somebody when you're going to do something, just like America. You're going to try to do it sooner. How much sooner? So these are all things to be concerned about. These are all things to be aware of. And the operation wouldn't start when the sea state's just right for the forces to go across. It would start prior to that because they want to soften up the target like we do ahead of time. We tend to bomb and do all these other things and send missiles in before we would ever think of sending in troops. Maybe a blockade would precede that. So all these things could start soon. And it could be, since China is anticipating an American attack, that they counterattack, that they would actually move on American forces, maybe the U.S. homeland at the inception of all this, just to keep us from doing anything at all. And yeah, they could fully, completely, absolutely bring us to our knees economically, culturally, as a civically, and militarily, easily with asymmetric warfare. If you've not been listening to me explain some of this stuff, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail here. And that's why we're going to start out. We're talking about uh, Operation Spiderweb. Now, in Operation Spiderweb, you got to be aware that the Ukrainians actually attacked across, like I said, 5 time zones into Russia. 5 time zones. So they hit 4 military bases. And these military bases, well, they actually targeted 5. They planned to hit Ukrainka and the Amur Oblast. But in this case, the truck that they sent in caught fire. Probably because of the explosives that were on it, maybe. I don't know, but it caught fire, so it wasn't able to execute that attack. So they did hit Balaya, they hit Olenia, they hit Olena, or however you pronounce it. Hey, my Ruskie's rusty, okay? I've been there before, but like I said, my Ruskie's rusty. So forgive me if I murder some of these names. But anyway, there was the airbase Diagivilo and Ivanovo. And so what they attacked was they attacked Tu-95MS, Tu-22 M3s, and Tu-160 strategic bombers. This was a attack on strategic bombers more than anything else. They also hit an AN-12 transport plane. They've hit one of the radar planes. So they hit an A-50. The early warning radar plane was the A-50. So 41 planes were hit, but as far as we know, only 13 were actually utterly destroyed. So, but it was still a devastating attack. And the Ukrainians used 117 drones. They called them OSA, which is, I guess, Ukrainian for wasp, OSA. They were FPV quadricopters. By FPV, we mean first person viewer. And some guy is sitting there with a joystick controlling this helicopter. Each carried about 3.2 kgs of explosive materials. So that's about 7 pounds, for us Americans. So these drones were hidden in prefabricated little wooden cabins, mobile shelters on the back of these flatbed trucks. And some of them to me look more like porta potties. But in any event, so they had each truck had a roof that was hiding about 36 of these drones. They were smuggled into Russia through Chelyabinsk, where they had some kind of assembly covertly going on there with their cabinaries. Chelyabinsk, you might remember, is that city in Russia where just a few years ago they had a huge meteor, a small asteroid burn up in the atmosphere going across the sky. It blew out a bunch of windows and injured a lot of people from the shattered glass. So that was a very interesting event in Chelyabinsk. Anyway, so over several months they snuck these parts in. And maybe they bribe Russian customs, so they get these in the assembly site near Chelyabinsk. We don't know. But the truck drivers themselves were unaware of what they were driving. They didn't know what the contents were. They were just Russians that were given a contract, drive this truck from point A to point B. Now, see, in this case, what the operative thing is, Ukraine did not own farmland or any facilities near these bases. They use trucks. And for bases in America that are not owned by or have farmland near them or other facilities. Now, China's got warehouses everywhere. I mean, everywhere China's got warehouses in the United States. Remember the warehouse in Reedy, California that had all those nasty biologicals, bioweapons? Yeah, you see what I mean? And you got to factor that in too to what we're going to be talking about. That would come into play most likely because we probably only found the tip of the iceberg. We might have found 1 out of 21 or more. We don't know. We just simply don't know. We weren't supposed to find that one, of course. Anyway, so Anyway, the public didn't know what was going on. They had no idea until these things opened up and the drones started flying out, and they said that some of the locals were trying to throw rocks at them. They weren't at all prepared for what was to come. But anyway, so these OSA drones, again, FPV, first person viewer, were actually commanded by Ukrainian pilots. And they were supported, though, by AI recognition. They had AI software. It was trained on the target aircraft, specifically on the aircraft components that were most likely to detonate, like fuel tanks or the most critical ones, like avionics areas. So they were focused on what would do the most damage if they struck. And so they were pretty good down. Navigation used dead reckoning, which in mobile phone networks, they did not use GPS to avoid GPS jamming. Pretty smart, right? So again, we're talking 117 drones, 41 targets hit, 12 to 13 of them at least destroyed. It was, like I says, unprecedented attack that caused 5 Russian time zones. And this really showed the power of AI assisted drone attacks. Now, nobody in the world makes more drones or is near the experts in drone making as our good friends over in the People's Republic of China. I say good friends facetiously. Actually, the people there's a lot of good people over there. It's not the people I'm concerned about. It's the party that controls them. I've talked about that many times. The people would like to get out from under that too, right? So, and then the Mossad, less than 2 weeks later, launched a similar operation in Iran. Now, the drone component, the lead in, the start in, to kind of soften things up before their aircraft started coming in force, was on the 13th to the 15th of June. This is the beginnings of the 12-day war, as we call it, which, we may see in Act 2. Will they still call it a 12-day war then? Or I don't know what we're going to do in that case. But anyway, the so-called first 3 days of the 12-day war. So what did the drones that the Mossad put into Iran target? They targeted air defense and missile systems. Covert drones disabled early warning radars and SAM sites, such as surface-to-air missiles near Tehran, Kermamash, Tabriz, and other strategic bases. These missile launchers that they hit included SRBMs, short-range ballistic missiles, like the Fata 110, the QAM, the Goddard 110, were destroyed. And various our Iranian Republican Guard sites like Kermash or Kerman, or let me say how you say it. Kerm Ker Kerman Shah or something like that. I can't, my Farsi and is also rusty. Okay, Tabriz, Amman, Tehran. They hit a lot of facilities, and they were also hitting the around ballistic missile defenses around the facilities that our forces later went in and hit when we did our operation, the B-2s. So they hit ballistic missile defenses around Natanz, Esfahan, Fordow, and Iraq. Oh, yeah. They were taking out radar and electrical components, softening those up before our forces went over there. So they also targeted, of course, Iranian leadership and scientists. They took out General Hossein Salami, who just like a day or two before, made a big public statement. We're prepared for whatever they want to throw at us. Well, he wasn't personally prepared for it, was he? So General Mohammed Bagray, or however you say that, General Amir Ali Hazadi, anyway, several of them. They took quite a few. A good chunk of the IRGC leadership, and also a good number of their top nuclear scientists, like Freyerdun Abbasi. But anyway, so they had this way to supply and sneak in the stuff to build these drones there too, and they set up a clandestine base near Tehran in a 3-story building. And they used that to assemble the drones. But they snuck the stuff in with shipping containers and suitcases, any way they could get it in to get them there. So, and again, the drones were launched overnight in a synchronized attack, strike operations, even in conjunction with Israeli missiles. They took out cellular networks. They used the spike missiles also in support of this. Um, and, they used literally hundreds of quadricopter style kamikaze drones, all smuggled in. The airstrikes were supported by later by 200 plus Israeli aircraft, with Mossad agents and drones softening the defenses before they went in. So this drone missile base factory in Tehran, like I said, was a three-story building in an area called Sharar-e-Ray, something like that. Again, yeah, don't hold me to the pronunciation, pretty please. But yeah, they took out Iran's early warning systems, missile defense systems. It was absolutely stunning what they did and what all they took out in advance of that, my friends. So what we got to be aware of now is the scope of Chinese land owned here in the United States, and what kind of bases the Chinese could have to hit us right here at home. Well, they got 349,000 acres of U.S. farmland scattered across 27 states in the adjacency of the 17 to 19 U.S. military bases. And these include bases like Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, Camp Pendleton, MacDill Air Force Base, Laughlin Air Force Base, Grand Forks Air Force Base. Why Fort Bragg? Because Fort Bragg is the home of the 82nd Airborne. That's our troops that are likely to get sent into a place like Taiwan when we need to put Army troops there. You got to have somebody that can parachute in and build a beachhead and a landing strip for the other troops to come in later from other bases. So the airborne troops would be among the first. And they do have special forces at Fort Bragg. That's the home of the Green Beret. So from the Army side, Fort Bragg will lead the operation. Just like back in the Iranian hostage crisis, I was in support of the 82nd Airborne, not a member of the 82nd Airborne, but in support of the 82nd Airborne. They had us sequestered on base for 2 weeks, thinking we were heading to Iran then. So fortunately for us, that didn't happen because Jimmy Carter's army was a total mess. I can go into that later. We just weren't prepared equipment-wise, and that's why the whole operation fell apart there. But all that aside, so what you got to be aware of is this proximity to these bases. They got this farmland, lots of it within 30 miles of Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, large tracts in the county, Camp Pendleton, 277 acres in San Diego County, MacDill Air Force Base, about 10,000 acres in Polk County. Yeah. Laughlin and others in Texas and North Dakota, 100,000 plus acres and 370 acres in North Dakota. So FPV style drones with 5 to 15 kilometers can be launched easy from these plots. But and also, if they don't have land nearby, they may have warehouses. If they don't have warehouses nearby, well, they could use the Ukrainian approach and just send in trucks. My gosh, guys, their ability to hit our bases is off the charts. And there's also, you need to be aware of this, the man pads. There are rumors that man pads have been snuck across the U.S. border, man pads that we'd supplied to other engagements overseas in the past. These are shoulder-fired rockets that could take out aircraft coming off airstrips, basically. So if you can't get them on the airstrip, they may get them on ascent coming out. And I've already described in the past how drones flying over airfields could spray toxins that would basically eliminate everybody so they couldn't even get in their aircraft. Or maybe they would be sucked into the ventilation systems and people would suddenly start doing the funky chicken in the aircraft. I mean, they would be gone. They would be future compost for pushing daisies, essentially. So this idea that we're going to just up and fly our doomsday aircraft, they're going to target the very large, very low frequency radio transmitters in Maine, Washington State, and Hawaii. They know where these are, and their protection is really not adequate for their mission that they have. There's essentially no protection there. They could easily target those and take them out. The backup is the doomsday planes, but these kind of operations could take out the so-called doomsday planes before they even get airborne. So this whole notion that, a lot of people say, well, if they take out everything in this country, our submarines will respond. Not if they don't get the EAMs. They can't launch without an EAM and a confirmation EAM. It takes two messages to launch nuclear missiles. And that would not be forthcoming if all this got taken out. So it takes a very low. See how the aircraft work is they have to drag a long antenna to generate the very low frequencies that those towers also generate to be able to communicate with the subs underwater. So this is, yeah, a serious situation. I've explained this before. A lot of people still keep coming back with, well, we'll just launch submarines. Not necessarily. Our bases at home get EMP'd. Remember my EMP balloon video where I showed how actually put out a design, a plausible design, how to build an EMP balloon that would evade detection and countermeasures to take it down, at least current countermeasures. Yeah, guys, be serious. Be serious. These are things that China can do today. So, again, like I said, at least 17 and 19 U.S. military bases right here at home have Chinese on land within drone range of those bases. And, they can get to them even if they don't have land. And Ukraine didn't have any land near the bases they hit, the 4 bases they hit across 5 time zones in Operation Spiderweb on the 1st of June. So just bear that in mind. China's got a big leg up on an operation like that. So don't doubt that for a minute. So, who is there here that could attack us? Well, what we know is that we had something on the order of maybe 75,000 encounters with undocumented immigrants, military-age young men from China, mostly military-age young men. It wasn't families. It was mostly military. There were some women, but there's also some good women soldiers too. So don't doubt that for a second. Just occurring in the years 2022 through 2024. And that's only counting about half of 2024, a little bit, maybe a little better than half. The fiscal year ends in September. And I don't even think these stats went out through September, probably. So there's possibly more, maybe even up to 100,000 that come across the border. Now, these are the ones we intercepted. Now, the really bad guys are going to be smuggled across places. They want people to go through places where they see people, so the Customs and Border Patrol is all focused there. But there's other areas where the cartels would smuggle in their high-value people that you just didn't see them because you were so much looking here, you weren't looking over there where they were actually sneaking in the high-value people. They're head honchos for their drug cartels, high-value customers, like maybe some really good operatives or sleeper cells from various countries. I don't know, my friends. So this is something to be very, very concerned about when you get that many. And it's not just that. So the sleeper cells may be the main ones that would be sneaking across. But we've got a lot of legal immigration in the United States and people visiting on visas from China. Now, what we do know is that something on the order of 5.5 million people in the United States self-identify, according to the census, as Chinese. Now, a lot of these were actually born in the United States. About 2.9 million of those immigrated to the United States from China. What I don't have, and I've searched for and I can't find it yet, is how many of those are still actually citizens of China. You could assume 1 to 2 million easily. Since we have about 258 million adults in America, that's almost one per, possibly one per every 100 or 200 adults. Now, why does that matter? Because there's this thing called Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Law. Article 7 stipulates that even if the Chinese citizens are abroad, they're legally obligated to support, assist, and cooperate with national intelligence efforts of China. Let me make that clear again. All Chinese citizens and companies also companies, you got to bear this in mind, even when abroad, it's probably especially when abroad, are required by Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Law to support, assist, and cooperate with national intelligence efforts. So what, we got over 1 million spies here in the United States? Now, a lot of these people may not want to be like that, but China forces it. and they have little leverage. If they really want something from you and they think you got some good intel, they'll threaten your family at home. Oh yeah, or maybe your ability to come back, or your, which they might be happy with, or maybe your station when you do get back home. So this is how China has turned their dysphoria of citizens into spies. And you know they have Chinese police stations, you know, secret Chinese police stations all over the world. They've had them here in the United States, and they don't just stop with Chinese citizens. Oh no, if you've got Chinese heritage, they think you belong to them. They think anybody in the world who's got Chinese heritage belongs to them, just like they think probably the whole world belongs to them. Oh yeah, they've come out now with the United States belongs to China because they said the American Indians are, you know, really Chinese, and they were here first. Although they weren't Chinese, they were like Central Asian in their descent, which is the same as Chinese. But never mind. You know, look at what they made up with the 9-dash line and how they claim the whole South China Sea. China has a way of really exaggerating things to make claims for things they want to take. So why are they claiming this about the United States now? See, that's also maybe that justifies what we're talking about here. You know, we do know that the Chinese Students and Scholars Association is funded by the Chinese Communist Party, United Work Front, and so they're getting money from that. They're being pressured to have dissidents here and participate in some of these activities that are somewhat nefarious in this country. We've seen cases of Chinese espionage in California, near our Silicon Valley, where they want to steal a lot of our critical secrets. And there's just a whole list of spy cases here in the United States, and also cases where they've been sneaking biologicals across into the United States that we intercepted a couple of. What did we not intercept? What did we not get? So what would China do? How would they launch an attack? Well, they would start with, let's pick the SAC bases, for example. You know, our main means to respond to China would be our SAC bases, our Strategic Air Command. What would they do? Let's just take this as an example. Well, they would target these bases, including Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Oh, yeah. Minot is a home of nuclear bombers plus intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Malmstrom is a home of ICBM silos. They would take F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, an ICBM command base, Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, where you have B-52s and command headquarters, and Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri with B-2 stealth bombers. Yeah, I've seen the bombers taking off from Minot many years ago when I drove through there. So it was pretty impressive to see a chain of those taking off. Of course, they smoked a lot, you know, back in the day. I guess they still do probably. Just probably burning diesel fuel. Anyway, Chinese. So you know, after the target, these would be targeted with recon. Now they got their own spy satellites tasked to do these kind of things, but that's not all they would use. They would use commercial and proxy means. Use of weather balloons, like remember that balloon, the Chinese balloon that came over the United States? Where did it stop? Right over North Dakota, right over 3 of these bases, and it just hovered there. Oh yeah, but we didn't deem to take it down in that area, which had very low population, very low prospects of letting anything happen to the civilian. No, we let it sit there and hover and spy. We could have taken down Canada before it came out. We knew about this one ahead of time. But we let it hover there for a little bit, and then it just moved all the way across the United States, and we didn't take it down until it went off the shore of South Carolina. Jeez, all the way clear across the United States. I was trying to get up to look for it in Tennessee, and I just missed it when it came through. Not far from where I lived at the time. Anyway, so something else you may not think about is they also can use commercial satellite data. They can use Chinese drone videos. Of course, they got their own drones, but there's also crowdsourcing imagery on social media of these drones near these military bases. And furthermore, to get real good intel of who's where, which you can see the kind of stuff the Mossad wanted to know, who was where, so we can take out leadership, facial recognition and license plate scanning. And they can use TikTok link or smart camera apps to geolocate key personnel. And we think that was a whole lot of what that balloon was doing that flew over during the Biden administration because of the altitude it flew. We think it was trying to scoop up people's cell phone data, cell phone numbers for tracking key members of our military. You see where this is important? Look at what the Mossad did. And think about that. Oh, yeah. So they would have pre-positioning via Chinese-owned land or businesses, like warehouses, farmland and warehouses near these bases. Maybe not necessarily that near them. Like, the Ukrainians operate out from Chelyabinsk and cover 5 time zones across, which is a howling wilderness out in Siberia. So to stage what they staged is just mind-blowing. Anyway, well, they can use logistics firms or ghost warehouses controlled by shell corporations to store drones, parts, batteries, and explosives, kind of like they store the biologicals in Reedy, California. And Lord knows there are tons of these warehouses here in the United States that they use for various and sundry purposes. And then, like I did, I mentioned all these Chinese companies are also still beholden to the Chinese military. Oh, yeah, every Chinese company. Yeah, a lot of people lose sight of that. In any event, self-smuggling and assembly, they can smuggle this stuff in through gray market shipments, disguised as something going to hobbyists or commercial goods. Like I said, nobody produces drones like China, and they send tons of stuff here. The explosives could be pre-supplied or harvested from fertilizer-based materials or mining explosives. I mean, they got farmland, so they would be in the market to buy what? Fertilizers. Yeah, I remember what took out the Oklahoma City, when that bombing occurred there, the big government building, huge building, fertilizer bomb. Yeah, ammonium nitrate, stuff like that. Boom, nasty stuff. Also, commercial farming type spraying drones can deliver chemical weapons on the air bases. Like I said, the people on the tarmac may never reach the airplane, or if they got in the airplane first, it would come into their air handling system, and nobody'd survive. Nobody'd survive, my friends. Whew. Nasty stuff that could happen. Anyway, so tactical drone use, the kamikaze first-person viewer drones, modeled after Ukraine's OSA or WASP drone, like or the Russian Lancet, typically would have a range of 7 to 15 kilometers, or suggestions that China has technology that could do better than that. And what about these drones that are thought to be the size of small SUVs that were sighted? Probably more fuel, more range. Anyway, 2 to 4 kg is shaped charge or incendiary charges. The bigger SUV drones, much bigger projectiles, much bigger. Anyway, speed 60 to 100 miles per hour, hard to intercept. They'd be flying low. Aircraft on the tarmac would be targets, B-52s, B-2s, refuelers, the KC-135s, things like that. Airfield radar domes, fuel depots, and air traffic control towers. Yeah, how you going to launch aircraft on the air traffic control tower goes kabooey. And we're not prepared for that kind of stuff here because we think we're safe here. So we haven't really fortified our forts here at home. Anyway, launchers near ICBM silos, the entrances, vehicle convoys, and they can just EMP the controls with the super MPs. The super MPs are just hard to deal with by any military hardening standard. Anyway, operator control. The operators can be embedded locally. Chinese nationals or even U.S. proxies. Oh, I love the Chinese Communist Party. We love communism, right? Anyway, flying, they could be flying these first-person view, FPV, from concealed basements, rooftops, or farmland. Rooftops, they might be watching it. Concealed basements, a lot of drone activities occurred like that. Anyway, use of pre-programmed flight paths or AI object recognition to lock in the fuel tanks, cockpit glass, or radomes. Anyway, so coordination via low-powered encrypted LTE mesh networks to avoid jamming and detection. So sleeper cell behavior, well, they could use these clean-skinned Chinese migrants, military-aged young men who illegally entered back in the period I was talking about. Like I said, maybe up to 75,000, possibly more. For technical support, expertise to do other attack activities or to fly these things. Yeah, they'd be positioned, of course, across states like North Dakota, Montana, Missouri, West Virginia, Louisiana, in the guise of agriculture delivery work, logistics, or academia. Now, like I said, this is just focusing on the SAC base attacks. It'd be attacking many other bases, not just the SAC bases. I'm just picking on that one here because that kind of stands out. It's more analogous to what the Ukrainians did with Operation Spiderweb. And the Chinese would be up looking to disrupt at least U.S. second strike capability. If the war already started, they may do it as a preventative strike. Just when they launch stuff, either way, this can happen either way. So they want to trigger mass confusion, political paralysis, in a pre-invasion or pre-conflict context. So U.S. They want to test our drone defense readiness. Now, the United States could do some countermeasures. We could begin immediate fencing and drone range coverage radius extended out to 15 kilometers around these SAC bases and other bases. There are some laser systems out there in development that could take out drones. There's something called drone geofencing, signal jamming to counter these FPV with microwave defenses. Ban on foreign land ownership. So that's one thing we've started within 50 miles of strategic sites. Now that's a good start, but that one will stop Operation Spiderweb where Russian or the Ukrainians didn't own anything. Just rent some trucks. Hey driver, take this truck there. Hey driver, take that truck there. Just take it there and park it. Leave it. We'll pick you up. I don't know. Anyway, investigation and screening drone part shipments. That would be a good one. How about maybe we just don't allow drones in the United States anymore? That might be a good one, right? So, so these are all things to bear in mind. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some articles. But see, there's other places that China would attack too, especially if they were going to attack Taiwan. They would hit our bases on Guam. Oh yeah, I'll show you some video where they had some simulation hitting Anderson Air Force Base on Guam, U.S. Naval Guam base. Japan, they could hit Okinawa on the mainland, hit bases there. South Korea, Camp Humphreys, which is the U.S.'s largest overseas base. Osan, Kusan, bases like that in the Philippines, Subic Bay, Basa Air Force Base, places like that. Yeah, they would be hitting all across these places, my friends. The targets in Guam would be very high likelihood, very high risk of being hit. Japan, well, it'll be a little harder hitting mainland Japan. Now, in Okinawa, maybe not so much. So that may be more of a moderate risk. South Korea's believed to be a high risk, and the Philippines, very high. That our bases there would be hit. So these are all things that we have to bring into mind here. What I'm going to do now is I am going to go over and just share some articles with you. Bing, 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 bing. Let's try and pull this up, get the right place. This is a simulation of an attack. It's embedded in another video. This was a standalone video posted in some places on YouTube, and they take it down. I think I got this video downloaded actually somewhere if I search for it. But anyway, here we go. Just look at this. There it is, Anderson Air Force Base. Yeah, that's enough. So let's look at this idea of the maps. Maps show Chinese farmland next to 19 military bases, alarming threats for national security. China's been buying up strategic placed farmland next to military installations across the United States. And I understand 19 bases here. And bing, 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 bing. Here's a map. Oh, yeah, look, Grand Forks up here. Whiteman Air Force Base. I wonder if I can make this large. It's blowing up. It's not scaling right. Anyway, now I just got an ad popping up. There we go. Yeah, I look up in Washington State and Maine near the big transmitters I talked about. Oh, yeah. They got facilities in these areas where they could go after those big VLF transmitters, very low frequency. My friends, this is no joke. Guys, you need to be thinking about getting yourself secure in every way you can, storing food, growing a garden. If you want to secure your money, I'd highly suggest you go to defythegrid.com. If you get a better price on gold, silver, platinum, worlds, they'll meet it or beat it. That's what they say. They'll meet it or beat it. Guys, there's something to think about. And you can get these gold backs, which I'm real fond of here. And my friends, just think about it. Use the code GREENGREGS, if you go there, you use the code, go to defythegrid.com, use coupon code GreenGregs to get 1% off. And that would help you and me both to the tune of 1%. So anyway, here is the announcement from the Trump administration about these, restricting Chinese groups from buying U.S. farmland. And like I said, even the companies are beholden to China. So here they're talking about feeding families down here. And, so Hexas did say it proposed a serious threat to national security, but he didn't go in the great deep depth about them. No, he didn't mention drone threats and things like that. I'm going to change the screen so I can click on these various things here. All right. Now, this is interesting. Governor Sanders, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I love this Kentucky rifle hanging on the wall behind her. Yeah, my first smoke pole was one of those. But she signed a bill in Arkansas to reinforce this, to ban Chinese foreign purchase of lands like this. And so that's something every state should take into account and join her on. And again, I mentioned this to you. Here it is highlighted. You see this Article 7 of the National Intelligence Law, which made cooperation with China's intelligence services a requirement for all Chinese everywhere. I kid you not. I don't make this stuff up, my friends. I do not make this stuff up. This is the cipher, which I guess is a kind of an intelligence rag out there on the internet. Anyway, there's just a whole host of these Chinese state-sponsored contract hackers. Oh yeah, well, sleeper cells though will be taking out more than just military assets in this country. We got this Chinese Students and Scholars Association. We got and this is why a lot of people criticized Trump when he canceled a lot of student visas. No, it was important. He did, that was a good thing he did. And a lot of people just don't realize, of course, universities are chafing because they're losing some money. So they're going to cry and whine about it. And so is a lot of the people on the left side of the political spectrum. But my friends, these individuals pose a threat, unfortunately. A lot of them may be nice guys and girls, but we have a serious intel threat here. And like I said, special Chinese espionage efforts in California, pardon me. And yeah, we had a big surge in migrant crossings and whose administration? Sleepy Joe's. Now, if you come to my channel and click on the videos, now this works better on computer. I don't know how to do this on the phone. And you put in a search like Chinese military balloon, not the top bar up here. It's going to send you outside my channel. If you come down here and click videos and click on this and put in Chinese military balloon, you get articles like this. Threat of Chinese military battle balloons. This is how I showed how they could actually use these in combat operations to take out our aircraft carriers should we get into battle with them over Taiwan. And I also talked about the range of the F-35s and a lot of other things in that said video. So this is my big EMP balloon attack video from which I wrote a white paper. Or this is actually based on the white paper I wrote, which went to the National Homeland Security committees in both the House and Senate. Yeah, my white paper got briefed. I wrote it for the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security, for which I am a member and now Arizona State Director, and I got to start working with some people here in Arizona on this activity. But, I covered this in several videos. And a lot of unrelated stuff shows up when you do these searches. Some of them are interesting. But I'll show you another couple of things here. So we got to worry about our dams. Dam dangers, U.S. and abroad. What could be done if they attack our dams? It's horrendous. I've talked about our power substations a lot, but, you got to take into account other things. And here I talk about grid down, likelihood and causes. And part of the causes is a direct attack on the substations, sleeper cell attacks. Plus, they got this stuff hacked out the yin yang, as we know. They could also attack our water, our dams, but the power is the key to everything. Without it, our society collapses. And here I go more into about the consequences. And I talk about things like why it's worse than full-scale nuclear war. A lot of people miss that. And I got a video somewhere, probably in this playlist, it actually says that. So in any event, a lot of stuff this grid down consequences. That's an important one to see. Did many videos on my channels here for watching, covering a range of topics. So you might want to check best bug out prepping advice. So a lot of stuff to say. That's a lot of my old ones coming up there. Anyway, so but yeah, you just go in and you put something out. Like I searched on Power Grid that time. Anyway, so I'm gonna stop the share. That was the main thing I was trying to convey to you. This is critical. If they come in here, they could be we could be hit by EMPs, from balloons, from satellites, then maybe intercontinental ballistic missiles. The hacking attacks would probably be the first thing to hit us. Then they would have the sleeper cells activated, taking out key infrastructure like substations, water stations. And they may do the water station first because that's going to sneak up on you. Some people are getting sick, and before you know it, and then all the other stuff could happen. And then biologicals, they could essentially, they might eliminate the population of the United States to a large degree. And just taking down the power grid is estimated it would take out 9 out of 10 people within a year due to societal collapse. And this was by the congressionally mandated EMP task force. And I looked at their analysis and I told them that they were optimistic. And I ran over Peter Pry and explained it. And he said, "You're right." The late great Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. So, my friends, this is no cakewalk. We're in for some serious trouble with the war with China, and it looks like it's coming. This is why you need to get ready. You need to get prepared. It could happen anytime. Um, be prepared, my friends. Just be prepared. Hope and prep and pray. Prep just in case. Pray that maybe somehow we avert this, and that's my top prayer. The second prayer is if we don't avert it, that you survive it. You and your family can ride through it. So I'm living in my bug out location. I take this serious. That's the proof right there. I am living in my bug out location. Now, everybody can't do that. I understand that, but do what you can. Just the extra bag of beans or rice every week might do a lot for you. Get you some water filters. I got a lot of videos on prepping and things to do, especially surviving an EMP, grid down. I got videos talking about how to survive a nuclear war. Best bug out locations. I'm gonna do another best bug out. I did a couple of videos on that. I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna go to what AI has to say about it. Anyway, my friends, I wish everyone well. I hope this does not happen. This is not my wish, but it's scary. Maybe China can be dissuaded from attacking Taiwan by something. Maybe just Taiwan getting real strong, or they might assume for some reason it's not worth it. Even if Xi Jinping kicked the bucket, you can expect that the Chinese Communist Party would carry forth this agenda because it pre-existed him. So, yeah, don't celebrate too much if suddenly he's pushing daisies. But the rumors of his demise have been greatly exaggerated from all appearances. So watch out. Anyway, I just want to say thank you all for watching. Subscribe to my channel, bang the notification bell, and click all if you've not already done so. Please share this widely. This platform really looks down on content like this. Like I said, they took a lot of those videos down with the Chinese attack on the Anderson Air Force Base that I showed you. So I couldn't find a lot of traditional standalone sources I had for that in the past. They were gone. Imagine it. Probably they made it a whole channel. I don't know. You got to be careful talking about this stuff. Anyway, thank you again for watching. And with that, I'm going to say, Greg out.